Now in this video, we want to find the angle theta such that sine theta and cosine theta will be the same. Now, considering a right angle triangle, okay, right angle at that point, let this be our angle theta, and let h denote the opposite to the angle, and let x denote the adjacent side, and let r denote the longest side as the hypotenuse. Well, from the sine and cosine angles of a sine and cosine functions of an angle theta, we will have that sine theta is equal to opposite over the hypotenuse, that is just h over r, while cosine of theta is just adjacent over hypotenuse, that is x over r, right? Okay, so that holds. Now for the equality of these two functions, sine and cosine, it follows that h over r should be equal to x over r. So if sine is to be equal to cosine for an angle theta, it's like saying that these two ratios are equal. Very good. So for the two ratios to be equal, where the denominators already are equal, it means that the numerator should be equal. That is to say that h should be equal to x. Alright? Very nice. So, given that if h and x are going to be the same, then sine theta and cosine theta are going to be equal. We can rewrite or we can redraw the right angle and put down the sides, the length of the sides as follows. So h can take this form, and since h is equal to x, so that means that this portion of this x length is the same thing as the h length, and this is going to be our r, and this is going to be the theta. Okay, so from the Pythagoras rule, that we know that the square of the hypotenuse side is the same thing as the sum of the squares of the other two sides. It follows that we can try to get the hypotenuse side in terms of the h. Okay, so by just doing this, we will have that r squared is equal to 2h squared. So to get the r, we need to take the square of both sides, and you know that r is a length, so we're going to talk about only the positive square root, alright? So that means that r is going to become square root of 2 times h. So that is the r square root of 2 times h. Okay, so since that is our r, it means that sine theta will now become h over r, that is h over r, which is now root 2 times h, and cosine theta is now going to become h, it is x, so where h and x are the same, so that will become h over root 2 times h again, and you see that h and h will just cancel out, and we'll enter with just 1 over root 2, which is the same thing as root 2 over 2. And again, we see that h and h here will just cancel out nicely, and we'll just enter with 1 over root 2, which is the same thing as root 2 over 2. And of course, that implies that sine theta is equal to cosine theta. That makes a lot of sense, alright? So we've gotten what we wanted, but it follows from here that sine theta is equal to root 2 over 2, and also that cosine of theta is equal to root 2 over 2. Oh, it's not showing. Okay, so it follows that, alright? That means that theta will be the sine inverse of root 2 over 2, and of course, this is one of the basic trig ratios, that sine of an angle is going to be root 2 over 2 if that angle is going to be 45 degrees. That is, theta is 45 degrees or pi over 4. Okay, and again, theta here is 45 degrees or pi over 4. So with that angle, sine and the cosine functions are going to be equal. Very good. But that is not the only angle in which they are going to be equal. Now let me show you guys real quick that if we're talking about a unit circle, okay, let me just talk about the quadrant. We divide this, okay? This is the first quadrant, second, third, and fourth quadrant. And you know that when an angle lies in the first quadrant, that is between 0 and 90 degrees, then such an angle has sine, then sine and cosine of that angle is going to be positive, including a tangent, but we are not really concerned with tangent right now, right? In the second quadrant, it's only the sine function that is positive. So we can locate our 45 degrees in this first quadrant here, so we can call that pi over 4, alright? And sine of this angle and cosine of this angle are going to be positive, and they are going to be equal. But in this second quadrant, cosine is going to be negative here. It's only sine that is going to be positive. So there is no how the two of them are going to be equal in the second quadrant. Okay, now in this third quadrant, it's only tangent that is positive. So sine and cosine are going to be negative. That means there is a certain angle here, and we can just call that like this. That is just by strengthening the line to this part. So that is by adding 180 to 45 degrees, adding pi itself to 45 degrees, we're going to enter with 225 degrees, which is the same thing as 5 pi over 4. So this is from here to here is the 180 degrees. So if we add it with this one, it follows that this angle here, okay, is 225 degrees, which is the same thing as 5 pi over 4. So it means that if we talk about sine of 5 pi over 4, it's going to be negative root 2 over 2. And cosine of 5 pi over 4 will still be negative root 2 over 2. So they are going to be equal. So if theta is going to be 5 pi over 4, then sine theta is also equal to cosine of theta. So you see that it's not only when theta is pi over 4, it also works for 5 pi over 4. But notice that 5 pi over 4 is gotten by adding just pi to pi over 4. That makes a lot of sense because it's going to help us to get a general statement for our theta, that we can say that theta is equal to pi over 4 plus pi. Okay, where that pi there is just 180 degrees. But even if we subtract pi from this pi over 4, it's still going to make sense, alright? Because considering the sine and cosine curve, it moves for the positive x values and for the negative x values as well. So that means that if you just put this down here, n, and I can say where n is an integer, that is any whole number, be it positive or negative, even 0, that's just integers. So if we have this as a general statement for our theta, then it follows that sine theta and cosine theta are going to be equal. So that n is an integer means that n can be 0, it can be positive or negative 1, can be positive or negative 2, and so on, right? Okay, so that makes a lot of sense, and this is the general form of our angle theta, for which sine and cosine are going to be equal. Okay, thanks for watching, and if you are new to my channel, please, this is Sumptuous Teacher's channel. I am the teacher. Okay, thanks for watching.